Hey everyone, this is another episode on the Managed Partners podcast called Tactical Tuesdays. We've been coming to you with these, I've been pulling on my team, bringing different folks on to kind of dive into, different technical aspects of digital marketing. And so we just want to kind of keep that going and go into the nuances and all your questions and kind of how things work. So we're covering different topics. And of course, if you're watching this, go on LinkedIn or you see this post, if you have questions or you have a topic that you'd like us to cover as far as when it comes to marketing for your law firm, let me know and we can cover that. So I've had Kayla Davis here. She runs our content department for Array Digital. And so she's been on the last few episodes with me talking about content and how important that is in this organic game that we play. And so today we wanted to cover your questions, your frequently asked questions. So questions that I get a lot, Kayla gets a lot from our clients, from prospects that we spend our time, answering for everyone when we're having a one-on-one with them. We're going to answer those today and hopefully it'll be very helpful for you. So Kayla, welcome back to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Super fun being able to do this series with you. We are talking about some frequently asked questions we get here today, just from lawyers all over America wondering what they should do next. Even if they want to work with an agency or just get some help, we have the questions stacked up. So I'm super excited to talk about it.
Yeah. And I think, this should be helpful for most people that, there's a lot of lawyers I know do their own content or they start out doing their own content. And, or I know some that are successful that still do their own content and manage their own stuff in-house. So things change a lot. Google's always changing and we got to keep up with that. So we're going to bring the best answers we can today and cover those things. So good way to wrap up the content series here. So, well, Kayla, I guess we'll just jump into it. So first question, which I hear this a lot all the time because I'm at the money end of the deal here, working with our clients, trying to figure out what their budgets are and what they can do and what's optimal for them. And, that's where I spend most of my time is what can we do for this client with this budget that's going to be most effective. So question is, how much money should I spend on content monthly? What would be my monthly budget that I should dedicate towards content?
Yes. So this question can vary, of course, depending on where your firm currently is and where you would like to go. If you are a small law firm and you are trying to really bring some visibility to your website, then I would say ideally you want to budget in maybe $1,000 or so. If you're working with an agency, budget in at least $1,000 for content each month to be able to get up a piece or two and really start to gain that momentum online. Within the monthly budget, you can kind of equate it more to how much of my budget gives me the number of pieces that I need. So if you can equate a certain number to a certain price point, rather, to a certain number of pieces, then you can, in your mind, start to see where you need to go. So essentially, a lot of lawyers will also kind of combine this question with how often do I need to write content or how much content do I need to do per month? Do I need to write a blog a week, a blog a day? What does that look like? And it really is just thinking about quality over quantity. And so even if you're only able to publish, let's say, 2 pieces of content per month, if those are high quality, well-researched, and they can bring in qualified traffic, then budget for that versus budgeting for 10 pieces that are all super thin content. They don't really add any value to your website and don't really do much for you. So think about it in that sense, the quality factor and what you're getting for your buck. And when you're looking for an agency to work with, ask them for some examples of the type of content that they write and just make sure that it's not content that's this small and it doesn't really do anything for that website. Make sure they have a history of being able to bring in traffic for their clients.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think, I see a lot of times people like, I have writing, or I have someone that does it for me. They publish and it's like, little teeny blogs that are super short and it's more frequent than it is, long form and quality. And so in this case, we want quality and it needs to be longer form. In some cases, depending on what the keyword is and your geographic area, your competition. But so think about all that. We used to use a word count system here because we actually pay kind of like by the hour, but by the word. And it cost us, kind of by the word to have writers, on staff and employed. So that's kind of how we do it. But we switched to a unit system because pieces vary, depending on competition and things like that. So think about it as a piece, or in our case, a unit, how many you get per month. I get the how often question all the time too, Kayla. So that one's a frequent one.
Yeah, perfect segue into question 2 here. How often should I write content? That's another one we get. Again, really quality over quantity. If you are sitting down and dedicating a couple hours a week to churning out a piece per day, but you don't have any data on if that's doing anything for you, then you should probably reallocate that time or that money. So what you want to do is, to start, if you're going to be writing the content yourself, what I usually recommend is to set aside for a couple months a particular cadence. So, say every 1st and 15th of a couple of months, you are going to sit down and write one piece for your site. When you do that, after about a 4 or 5 month mark, you want to look at your site traffic and really kind of funnel it down to those individual pages in Google Analytics, and see what kind of traffic that is picked up. And then if you also have Google Search Console set up, then you can see the types of keywords that those pages are picking up as well. And so you can kind of take that data comprehensively and see if your efforts are working. Now, again, when we say it has to be well researched, we've talked about this in our last few episodes. You cannot just sit down and write anything that comes to mind. You want to ensure that you're writing things that are something that you're passionate about, right? But B, it also has to have some good search volume. So if you're writing about all these, let's say you're a tax lawyer, all these complex pieces on tax law that the average person is not going to understand, then you're not really going to bring in any traffic. You have to make sure that the piece is well researched before you even write. So that starts off with a content strategy. And one thing I always tell attorneys is, when they're writing, you have to keep your user in mind. Your user is not an attorney. And so even though, there might not be legal terminology in your state for, let's say, custody, for example, I know in a few states, Texas, for example, they use the terms conservatorship and guardianship versus custody. Even though that's not technically a term in Texas law, you have to meet your potential customers where they're at. So you have to make sure that you're writing content that speaks to these terms that they may have heard in other states, right? We have a large military population where I am, and I know that's true along the coasts of, a lot of different states, and even in some states that are more internal, like
The Army,
yeah, exactly.
Air
So
Force.
people move around, and from state to state, they pick up this terminology and they just apply it to wherever they move to. And so you really have to be careful that you're not saying, well, I'm not going to say that term because it's not a thing. You're not helping anybody. You really do have to make sure you meet them where they're at. So look at the search data, look to see what people are actually looking for online. And in the content, you can let them know, hey, we know you're probably searching for, how custody works in Texas, but in Texas, we actually use these terms. So now on, in this piece, we will refer to custody as, conservatorship. And then that way, you're able to kind of pick up on that terminology, but still use the terms that feel right to you as an attorney.
No, that's a good point. If you're in a situation where you have a service or a product where you have to educate the client first, or you just hope that they're educated first, then you're not going to win at that game. So, use it as an opportunity to educate them. Hey, I know you were searching for this, but here in Texas, it's actually this. And that allows you to show up for that and explain it and help them understand that. I just had literally a podcast listener that reached out, and she's a solo employment discrimination attorney. And her pages, I just did like a quick analysis, and her pages are like New York employment discrimination attorney. Well, no one searches employment in there based on the data. That's just not a term they put in there. So it's just New York discrimination attorney or lawyer. And so just a small tweak there, but just there's no volume for the latter. And so it's just understanding how people search, what they, what what they say and think and how they do things. So again, that comes down to the research and the data and having a strategy versus just plucking what you think is going to work well out of thin air. So I'll also add too, like thinking about social media content, different. This is not the same. Social media, do what's on your mind. Do whatever you think, and some stuff will work, some stuff won't. This is not the same thing. I had someone make a comment the other day that was like, saw like a clip of our podcast. It was like, oh, no, you should just do whatever is on your mind. And they were talking about social media content. Totally different. So we're talking about organic SEO here and attracting people that are looking for an answer. Totally different story. So you need to have a plan. You need to have a strategy. You have to have quality.
Well, I think that brings us to our next question. How do I conduct research to properly write content? As we mentioned, you want to make sure you are aware of what people are currently searching for. So there are various tools to help you do this, but without spending a dime extra of money, what you can do is really just utilize some autofill features in Google search. So if you start typing in, workers' compensation or use, who, what, when, where, why in front of some, legal terms. So why is my workers' compensation? And then it can autofill claim denied, right? And that is something that you can start to explore and really go down a rabbit hole. You can do that for a variety of things: custody, workers' comp, personal injury, divorce, et cetera, really anything that you work in. But that is a really good way to kind of just see a little bit more what people are searching for, because Google is not going to really autofill that information unless people are typically searching for that. And so that's a good place to start. Another thing that you can utilize right within the search engine is what's called the People Also Ask accordion. And that will allow you to kind of discover some additional questions that people are looking for that's related to that initial query that you put into Google. And then another thing you can do is if you want to rank for more of a service-oriented keyword, let's say you are a Virginia custody lawyer, type that into Google search and just see who pops up for that, right? Visit their pages, look at your competitors, look at how they are addressing certain questions related to Virginia custody, and kind of build out a knowledge base there to really understand what opportunities you can take in your content. Of course, you don't want to do a copy paste. You don't want to make sure that your content sounds exactly like your competitor. Make it nuanced and add something new to the conversation. But you can really just kind of see that there's a bit of a method to writing content that gets found. And at the end of the day, as I mentioned, if you're writing a lot of content, I notice this a lot with business attorneys, especially tax law. That's just on my mind today. But if you are writing content that just isn't what people are searching for, but you're passionate about it, maybe utilize that time to put that on your LinkedIn, where it's more of a professional channel. You can connect with other tax attorneys who know the terminology that you're talking about. But the everyday person is wondering, why did I owe taxes this year versus getting a return? That's what they want to know. And so start there and kind of just allow yourself to go down a rabbit hole and jot down some topics that you see are commonly searching up or popping up rather on search engines. That's a free way to do it. There are additional tools that you can take advantage of.
That's a good tip.
Yeah, like Ahrefs, Moz, SEMrush. Like you can use all of these more complicated SEO tools to really just see where people are searching. But a lot of the things that you're going to hear when you're talking with an SEO are things like keyword difficulty. So how hard is it to rank for a certain keyword that you're trying to get on your site?
Yeah.
And then also search volume. How many people are searching for a certain term each month? And then position. So when you've written content and you've let it, be indexed by Google and crawled by Google, where does that show up for people? If you are in position 50, do you really think people are clicking to the fifth page of Google or the fourth page of Google to see your site? Not really. So actually, the lower the number of the position that you're in, the better. So if you're in position 1, that's way better than being in position 20. So those are kind of the key indicators to see how your content is performing over time. And you can always go back to your content and revise it a little bit more to be more user-friendly and answer more questions that you didn't do the first time around.
Yeah, I think those are good tips. I think, the auto suggest. So if you're to kind of make sure everyone knows, you go to Google and start typing anything, it'll start to fill it in for you. And that's just show like a list. Here's a bunch of other things. So that's a great way. Also, if you scroll down after doing a search, you'll see people also ask section, Reddit, other things will come up. But also at the very bottom of the page, you'll also see related searches that hyperlink down there too. But yeah, that's an easy, quick way to see what's going on. But without the tools, unfortunately, you don't know how difficult they are, right? You don't know a lot of things. And how many backlinks your competitor has, a link profile, other things that come into play. But I think more importantly too, say you wrote a piece right now and you're just in love with it. You did everything that we taught you to do, and you spent a ton of time on it. And then you're like, I don't even know where it shows up at. So you're Googling and you're looking page after page. You don't even know where it's at. So you might be making progress. And that's what these tools that we have show you. Hey, I'm 50. Oh, I'm 40th. Now I'm 32nd. And so that's positive progress, and SEO is not over time, not overnight. So you want to know that it is making progress before you go change it, and it might make it move backwards again. So, having that visibility is important. But I think, if you're starting out and trying to do this on your own, Kayla's tips are great and gives you some direction to go in.
Yeah, and as an attorney, like, you're very educated. You've gone to school for what you do. But once again, it's just always important when you're writing, just keep the user in mind. I cannot stress that enough. Beyond keeping the user in mind, you also want to keep Google in mind. As Google progresses, and as people's attention spans get shorter and shorter, when you're writing content, do not be long-winded. You have to strike a balance between thin content and kind of this long, exorbitant content, right? And that can be hard for attorneys. It seems like it's just one or the other. But you want to make sure that as much information as you can put into bullet points, numbered lists, things that are really easy to see, make some infographics perhaps, those are going to be things that you can utilize on your website that will increase engagement time and give Google those positive engagement signals to help with that progression that Kevin just mentioned. So really striking that balance and getting an SEO to really just kind of audit your site and audit your content and see how it's performing for you and provide suggestions is always something that I think would be a great use of your time. SEO is not easy. It's very, very involved, and content is just one factor of it, albeit a big factor. You can't really rank for keywords if you don't have anything on your site that speaks to those keywords. But it used to just be stuff your site with keywords and make sure all your pages kind of are redundant or say the same thing over and over again. And now you have to be really genuine with your content. So again, have someone who does this every day for you, sitting down with you just to kind of walk you through that. I mean, it's incredibly helpful. So reach out to us if you're like, hey, I've been writing content for a year. It's done nothing for me. What do I do next? We usually are able to diagnose the issue in 60 seconds. That seems fast, but literally I can look at it and I'm like, well, this needs change, this needs change, this needs change.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do all the time. Yeah, anyone listening to that's like, you don't have to hire us for anything. I have all these tools, and I have Kayla and Wyatt and a whole team behind me. So we do that all the time. So happy to do it for you, give you information, say, hey, here's what's wrong, here's what you need to do. Here's the challenges you have, keyword difficulty, things like that. So do that all day. So happy to do it if anybody needs that done for them. Again, regardless if you need to use us for something or not. So yeah, the tools are powerful, and they give you that picture and view of what you need to do, but then also what I've done, how is that performing, and then what do I need to do next? So that's super, super important. Let's go to the next question. What tools do I need to start writing content? So what do you suggest there?
So the first tool, if you are willing to spend the money, as I mentioned earlier, see if you can utilize maybe even just a basic version of an SEO auditing tool, or a website auditing tool rather. So there are lots of kind of crawlers that you can use. Screaming Frog is a really popular one. And Screaming Frog will let you just run your entire site and see which pages are kind of missing critical information. So if a page is missing an H1, you're going to want to go in and correct it. So when we say what tools should I use to write content, it's important that you understand that the tools to write that content, that comes later. You want to make sure that you have the tools to start your website audit and create a plan first. And that can start with Screaming Frog, as we mentioned, or another kind of crawler that helps to compile all that information together in a nice data set or in a sheet that shows all your data there. Another tool that we always tell our clients to use is your suite of Google tools. So if you have a website and you don't have Google Analytics properly set up, Google Tag Manager, Google Search Console, if you don't have your Google tool set up, how are you truly going to measure the effectiveness of the efforts that you've put on your site? This is critical. Google Analytics, it used to be called Universal Analytics. Now they're calling it GA4, Google Analytics 4. It's the newest version, but there's a lot that you can do in there. But what you want to make sure that you know how to access very early on is your traffic acquisition. So being able to see where are you getting the most traffic from your site? Is most of your traffic direct traffic, meaning people are just typing in your URL and coming to your site? If that's the case, that means you need to put some more effort into your marketing. Because most of the time when it's direct traffic, it's word of mouth referrals usually.
It could be due to like you're doing traditional marketing
Mm-hmm.
or TV or radio or billboards. You could be getting that name kind of search, the branded search type stuff.
Exactly. But that's hard to track, right? Like as you just mentioned, Kevin, it could
Very
be
hard.
from TV, billboards, radio. Like, where is this coming from? Hard to track. So you want to, over time, start to see that direct traffic lower and your organic traffic, organic search traffic increase. And then when that organic search traffic increases, you can start to make inferences on, okay, these are the pages that are bringing me the most traffic. What did I do on these pages differently that I haven't done on other pages of my site that is not bringing in traffic? And then you can start to emulate those best practices. So if you're writing new content that has those bulleted lists, that has, summarizing key takeaways at the top, that has more multimodal elements like images, videos, graphics, etc., infographics, then you're going to want to make sure you put those efforts into each piece going forward, because those are clearly helping users and getting found in search engines. So over time, that's the shift that you want to see. And what we do internally is we take all of these tools into a forensic website audit and make adjustments and inferences on, okay, if the traffic is down here, if bounce rate is really high on this page, here's the technical action we need to take, and then the content action that we need to take. And that forensic website audit informs everything else that we do, from the site architecture to the content publishing, right? So very, very important that even before we start talking about the tools to write the content itself, you have put in place the proper tools to get the data that you need to even begin creating a content strategy. Beyond that, tools that you can use to write content, there are some SEO tools out there that can kind of help you figure out, some additional keywords to inject in the content. But I would say overall, you can use what I mentioned earlier, the people also ask, and kind of that autofill feature to help you organize the additional headings that you want to put in each piece of content and the questions that you need to answer from there.
I got two things I was thinking about. First, once you do have the traffic, so say you have a lot of traffic coming in, then you can do things like conversion rate optimization. Like, how do I got 3 leads from the page last week. How do I make it give me 5 leads? And what better way can I perform, calls to action, form fills, chat. And so then you can start to really optimize that and bring in more business, more clients from the same piece of content that you have. That's the luxury once you have the traffic, of course. Another thought is for those out there that haven't started, they don't have a website, they can't do a forensic website audit, they can't use some tools to like check to see what they need to fix, but they're starting from scratch. I would think, a lot of folks I've been talking to, the solos, there's not much there to review what they had. So what do you, what would you suggest for this, as far as them? Obviously the Google autofill and the searches and stuff like that, I think it's a great place to start. Any other suggestions for someone like that?
So if you are starting from scratch, then a forensic website audit, not really anything to audit. You're absolutely right. So from there, what you're going to mostly be doing is saying, okay, competitor analysis. what are my competitors doing? What are they doing well? And what can I learn from that? So if you are, we can take our example from earlier, a Virginia custody attorney, and you want to see, how do I create a page on my website that appropriately talks about Virginia custody, then you can look at some sites that are doing really well. When you're starting off, especially, what you want to make sure that you do is get your site structure down so that you can build upon it later. So you want to make sure that you have kind of what we call a pillar cluster model. And so the pillar pages are going to be the practice area pages on your site. So when you go up into the navigation and you hover over practice areas or services, it may say custody, divorce, adoption, etc. Those are the services that you offer. And then from there, you can start to build out some location pages if needed from there. So if you're in Virginia, you can build out a Richmond location page. You can build out a Virginia Beach location page. You can build out a Chesapeake location page, like all of these different locations just for custody.
Yeah.
And then you'll have your locations and you'll have your pillar pages, and those are kind of housed underneath the pillars. And then finally, you'll have some blog pages, and those blogs will link back to the main pillar page that they were associated with. But the purpose of those is to answer those more general questions. And so it's very important that you do a competitor analysis to ensure that you're setting that structure up correctly from the beginning. And then that way you don't have to go back and give yourself heartache over trying to correct an improperly done website. That is something that we focus on very deeply here, is just ensuring that the taxonomy of the sites that we build for our clients is fantastic and foundational for them to propel themselves forward in the future. So that's the advice I would give for a solo attorney in short here.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about structure and setup. I was, again, talking to a different attorney this morning that was like, well, can you just take my site and I was just like, well, no, because you got to check all the boxes. Everything's got to be built right. So Google can say, oh, let me follow this trail, right? Come into the site. Oh, it's an attorney. What do they focus on? Divorce. Oh, in Virginia. Oh, in Virginia Beach. They can just follow that kind of trail easily to see, what is this law firm about? What do they specialize in? And so we're just trying to make it easy for Google and the user to navigate and find what they want. So think about it that way, versus if your website homepage was like Virginia Beach divorce attorney, that being your main homepage, that's your main keyword. You don't want it to be that. If you're only to divorce, then maybe it's just divorce attorney, or maybe for the state of Virginia. But
yeah,
you want to think about how to break this stuff down. But you can always ask us, reach out, or you can research or look up the pillar cluster model.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I want to add on, Kevin, to what you just said there, that's super helpful, is ensuring that, like your homepage, for example, you don't want to try to target that for a location that's like Virginia Beach divorce, because most law firms you talk to want to in the future expand outward. So if you pass the bar in a certain state, then, and maybe you're starting off in the eastern part of the state, but you have no problem moving out to the western or northern part of the state in the future once you get the cases going, then those pillar pages should just be aimed towards potentially all of that state, all of Virginia. And then those location pages that you build out now will do the heavy lifting to pick up those near me searches. So if you operate in two different cities, let's say Norfolk and Virginia Beach, but your pillar pages are for all of Virginia, the pillar page may not get as much qualified traffic, but it's a good place to house all of those eventual location pages that you're going to tack on to the existing Norfolk and Virginia Beach. If you move up to Richmond and then move up to Fairfax and Alexandria, now you've dominated the whole state. So just always keep future growth in mind and don't pigeonhole yourself on your site just for right now.
Yeah, no, totally agree with that. And the goal is not to rank for Virginia divorce attorney. You want to rank for those localized searches, but that allows you to set your website up to do that. Exactly, right? And then expand, and then not confuse Google. Like, wait a minute, why is the Richmond page linked underneath the Virginia Beach page? And think about it like that. So it'd be kind of weird. So, but no, great points there. So yeah, definitely think about the future. I think it's great to niche. And if, like, say you only do divorce for women, or only do divorce for men, that's something you could, you can kind of niche your messaging for. But at the same time, you got to think about what people are searching. Are they searching for divorce only for men? Probably not. That might just resonate with them once they find you. Oh, they only help men? That's perfect for me. That's what I want. So just think about, your future growth and future plans and keep that in mind in your content for sure. Excellent. What else we got?
Next question.
Let's see. Here's a good one. How long should my content be?
Ooh, yeah, definitely a pressing question for attorneys that write their own content. I would say, that it depends on the content type. So we've talked about a couple different content types today: the practice area pages, location pages, blog pages. How long those are going to be will be informed by A, what people are searching for, and B, a competitor analysis. And then also, if you want to add in some additional nuance that you have to say about the topic, that will influence the length as well. But I would say a guiding kind of number to go off of for each piece would be, I would say at least 700 words or so. If you shoot under that and only have maybe about 300 words on the page, you're not giving Google the context that it needs to really understand the page at length. And then it also doesn't give you a lot of room to create internal links that further give Google the context that it needs to know what your site as a whole is about and what that individual page is about as well. So if you hit about 700 words with some good headings that really structure the information and put your ideas in order, that's a good starting point. I would say try, just for the sake of people's attention span, try not to go beyond like 2,500, just because no one's reading all that. So if you can, what kind of a good cheat code to use here is FAQ accordions on your site. So I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, but your on-page content can be a little bit shorter, just what you see immediately when you click on the page within the search engine. That can be a bit shorter. And then you can have, collapsible FAQs that dive deeper into questions that people may or may not be asking. If they're not asking that, great. They're not bombarded with all these words in their face. But if they are asking it, it's really easy to expand and collapse that information so that they can get what they need. So that's kind of another cheat code. And then the final thing that you can really do there, if you're struggling to more so condense your content. I feel like I run into that more often than I do. You need to expand. If you're struggling to condense it, say what you need to say on page and then embed a video. It could be a TikTok video, YouTube short, full on YouTube video, however you want to do it. But embed a video on the page, further explaining certain concepts that you have, or it can even be an MP3 file, like an audio file that people can just press play. And it's you saying, hey, you read the top portion of this. I'm going to explain it a little bit further, right? Give people options if they want to read more or not. If you're just kind of forcing them to read everything on page, then they might click off. So just be very, very mindful of that. I would say 700 to 1,500 is kind of maybe a golden number for all types of content. For location pages, it can typically be a lot shorter. But when we consider practice area pages, locations, blogs, etc., I would say that's kind of that golden set there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, obviously, as you get more advanced and you got competitor analysis, we can see like, hey, this competitor has this much content with this much length to it. So we kind of keep that in mind versus just writing, whatever number we feel like. So there's a recipe, if you will, when you're working with us. But for your sake, I think that's a good recommendation. I think, with any of the content, if you're writing the content, what's got to be in it and how long it should be, just think about what you would find helpful. Think about some other service or product you would be interested in or looking for, and how would you find it useful? So yeah, the FAQs that open up or a video, like all those things are just more helpful to people that get to the page, which guess what? That's what Google wants. So, that's the secret to Google right there is helpful content for people looking for an answer. Just think about that and get creative with it. But there's certain things you can do. And we've mentioned a lot of it in the other episodes. But, just if you feel like it's going to be helpful and it's written in a way that it reads well and it's helpful, then you're on a good path. Last and most important question of this episode: how do I know that my content's working? How do I measure it? So I've done all this work, Kayla, right? I've written 1,200 words like 4 times this month, let's just say. That's a lot of work. and a lot of energy, put up a website. Now what? Was that wasted time? Do I know if it worked? Is it like throwing stuff against the wall and hoping it sticks? I think this is a tricky one. So what do you got?
Yes. So I would say when you are starting or any kind of marketing campaign online, but especially with SEO, give yourself grace, exercise patience, because you are now getting into a field where there are more and more and more attorneys trying to take the top spot online. So there's a lot that needs to be done, and there's a lot of kind of just waiting around for Google to recognize your content and start to evaluate it and say, oh yeah, it's better than all of these other attorneys' content. And some of this is out of your control. You can always go in and edit the content and revise it and make changes, but you do have to remember that at the end of the day, and this is whether you're doing it yourself or working with an agency, however, whoever is executing this, have some grace, because a lot of this is out of the person's control. And it's really up to Google to evaluate that content and say whether or not it's useful. And if it's not, you can go back in and make needed changes. But there's a lot of A/B testing that can happen with content, right? And even internally, we almost do kind of have it down to a science, not saying that every piece of content is the same, because it certainly isn't. But we do kind of have standard practices that we're able to use to speed this process up a bit. But even still, there have been times where we have worked with certain attorneys and we were able to get them results like almost immediately with their SEO campaign, which is kind of unheard of. And there's been other attorneys who have had to wait a little bit longer, either because they're in a super competitive area or super competitive niche and they're starting off and they have to beat out people who've been doing SEO for the past 15 years and have that name recognition. So you really just have to, when working with these different types of attorneys, you really have to be mindful that your journey is not going to look the same as another person's journey. And the way you evaluate if your content is working overall is how I say it is phase 1 and phase 2 of content, and keeping those in your back pocket. So phase 1, I would say, is keyword acquisition. You have a new site. It's not really ranking for anything. No one knows it exists, essentially. So you want to write content that picks up on keywords that you are not ranking for right now. However, when you publish content and you start ranking for keywords, they're probably going to be in position 70, right? Really, really low positions, even though the number's high. Remember, it's kind of inverse. So they're going to be in really, really low positions or really far out in Google to where people got to like go to them and skip all the results that they immediately see. So that's the first step. And you just got to get the keywords and get Google to recognize that your site can actually rank for these. But it's going to be in position 70 or 75, right? Over time, you're going to build more content, build more internal links, start a backlink campaign to build up your domain rating. And so now, those rankings might go from 75 to 60 to 50. And it's just these incremental position changes that you just have to have patience for. But if you notice that you're having those position changes, that is progress. And you'll start to get a little bit more traffic. And you're not going to get the same amount of traffic if you move from position 80 to 50 as you would if you move from position 20 to 2, right? That's going to be a lot more significant. So in that waiting period, just ensuring that you are kind of looking more at that kind of data versus always equating progress to how many phone calls did I get per day will help you a lot. Another thing that I always tell clients when they're like, is this working? I'm trying to measure things. Do not, and I just mentioned this, don't equate phone calls to progress. Only because, yes, you want to get phone calls. Yes, those lead to cases. But there is a seasonality with pretty much every area of law. So if we talk about divorce, for example, people are not filing for divorce when their kids are home for Christmas or, for holidays.
Or summer.
Or summer vacation, right? So if you're comparing last week to this week and saying my calls are low, SEO doesn't work for me anymore. It's like 180. They're like, it was working last week. It's not working for me anymore. Something's got to be wrong. SEO doesn't work. Look at the seasonality and compare your data year over year. That is going to be the most important thing you can do. Compare Q1 this year of Q1 last year. And if you see that progress, if you see a jump in traffic, 300% increase in traffic from Q1 of last year to Q1 of this year, you're doing something right. So, but if you compare the week of spring break to the week afterward of how many people have called, you're going to think that something is happening with your site. Whereas, like, no, people were just at home with their kids during spring break and they don't want to file for divorce when the kids are home all day. So just think about it that way. Again, it's slow sometimes, SEO, and we recognize that. But when you have access to the tools that we have, we can give you that encouraging information, let you know you are making progress. It may not feel like it just yet, but don't give up. You will get there. Hang in there. Here are some recommendations that we can give you in the meantime, to still make sure that you're getting cases in house.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not overnight. You got to be patient, but the ones that stick with it and they're disciplined, that keep doing it, just writing content, and especially if you're doing the right way and you have a strategy, you are going to start to win the game and start to compete and start to show up and take some market share. And so you think about, okay, where do I want my firm to be next year or the next 2 years or 3 years? And if you're not planning on getting rid of your firm or going somewhere else, then this is like, I started my firm and this is the last thing I'm going to do. I'm going to run my law firm. Then SEO, start now, start right away. And at one point you'll be in those top spots and taking a lot of the leads the other ones get. I'll say this, it's not always the case, but sometimes, like you said, it's bam, a piece goes up, it hits, and you get really swift movement, and it happens quick. If you have a really low domain rating, probably less likely. But we have a client with like a DR or domain rating of 47, and I know we did a piece on probate. They went from 95th to first, and their traffic increased by 600 per month organic instantaneously. So, it can happen, but they didn't have that keyword at all. Basically, it's 95th spot. With the right research and prep, you're at least, you're not guessing. You're putting your best foot forward and saying, okay, if we do this and write it this way, we're gonna have the best chance we can based on our situation. And that's all we're trying to do.
Yep. When you're working with the strategist, you are paying for their research and their expertise. So just trust that relationship. Trust that you're in good hands. Obviously, vet your agency that you're working with, of course. But when you're working with a great agency, that's the whole entire job of a strategist, is looking at the data and making informed decisions based on that research to help you grow your firm. So just be patient. I mentioned this another episode. Stop Googling yourself. You're going to hurt your feelings. You're not going to show up where you want to show up because there's some factors in there. Don't Google your own name. That's not even what your site is ranking for. But we see it all the time. Lawyers Googling their own name and they're like, I'm not in position 1. So like, this isn't working. And it's like, well, did you Google what your services are ranking for? No, I didn't think about that. Let me do that. And
we're
then
not trying to rank you for your name.
Yeah, like that's not what people are searching for. So just, as I said, foster that relationship, trust that relationship, and then you'll be able to propel forward.
Love it. Well, all great questions that I hear all the time. And again, if you're a solo trying to start this on your own, this and the last few episodes would be very helpful for you. Or if you have questions, reach out. If you want like some guidance or just look at what you have, happy to look at it. Solo the other day was like, they made their own website. And then I looked at it for them. They're not a fit for us right now. So just happy to do that. If you have thoughts or doubts, I got one attorney I've been talking to for 6 months. He has another SEO company. And he's just like, can you take a look at this? I just want like a second set of eyes. And I've talked to him like 3 times. And, it's not a client. He's not paying us anything. And he might become one at some point. But, just kind of giving him my analysis and showing him, what they should be doing and where they can improve. And so reach out if you got any questions. I'll grab Kayla. We'll jump on a call. So happy to do that for you.
Yes, absolutely.
But I guess moral of the story, if you're not writing content or producing content at all, that's a problem. So just make that in your head. Like if you own a law firm, solo or 100 attorneys, it doesn't matter. Content should be worked into your marketing. It just needs to be part of it. So if not, you're missing out on a massive part of the market of, honestly, the best place to be, I believe. Billboards, TV, radio, it's great. But depending on what your practice area is, these are very timely things. People need something now. And they're going to go search for it. Even if they saw the TV, radio, they're going to go search. And you're hoping that they see your name and go, oh, yeah, I heard them on TV. That's great. But all those folks that just go online, they're not going to find you if you're not playing the organic game. And if you're only doing ads, then you're just paying and renting that space while you're paying. If you stop paying, boom, you're gone. So you got to be making the investments to build up that organic. And I'll leave us with this, I guess. The content has way more uses than just that, too. LinkedIn, like you mentioned, your newsletters. If you want to send a link to a client that has a question by email or on chat, oh, hey, we answered that question here on this great article we did. PR, your articles could be, that content can be used in other places. So it's just unlimited amounts of things that could be social media content. It could be a video, it could be audio, it could be a podcast. The list goes on. So
lead magnets is really helpful. Repurposing the content for lead magnets. Yeah, it's pretty endless. I mean, this is just stage one.
Yeah, give me your email and you can download this document on things to know before filing a divorce in Texas or whatever, right? So think about all that stuff. It can be done. So anyway, well, Kayla, anything else you want to leave us with?
No, that is it. I've really enjoyed sharing some knowledge here over the past several episodes. This has been really, really fun. And ultimately, I want people who watch this video, attorneys that watch this video, to not feel overwhelmed by the information that we've shared. Just take a couple tips with you and start on that. If you want to build out a strategy and you need that help, again, as Kevin mentioned, reach out to us. We can give you some tips that are more individual to your particular firm. But overall, there's a lot with content and how that feeds into SEO. But if you just, again, write content that's well researched and that you're passionate about, and that you've sat down to really just put the time into and make sure that it's useful for your audience, that's going to help you more than any kind of tool out there that might promise a quick win. Just spend the time and do the research.
I like it. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Another Tactical Tuesday here with me and Kayla. We're going to have these every Tuesday, so tune in. And, of course, on Thursdays, we have our normal show where we're interviewing top attorneys and other experts as well. So questions, episodes you want us to cover, let me know, and we'll work it into our schedule. Kayla, see ya. Everyone else, bye.